How's it going, everyone? Cinder here with another video discussing how I would adapt various books and stories from the Railway series. Today's episode covers Thomas and Victoria. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, then don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and ring Toby's bell to stay notified for when I post new content. Now then, with all of that out of the way, let's get started. Thomas and Victoria is the 41st and penultimate book of the Railway series, written by Christopher Awdry, son of the original series creator, Wilbur Awdry. It was published on the 3rd of September 2007, coincidentally releasing at the exact same time as the first two episodes of season 11 of the TV series. The book mostly follows a new character, an abandoned coach named Victoria. Over the course of the book, she gets fully restored and put to work on Thomas's Branchline, while we also learn a little bit about her past. Some elements of these stories may sound familiar to you, even if you haven't actually read the book. Let's take a look, shall we? The first story, titled Overloaded, explains that Toby is having to single-handedly take all of the workmen to the quarry as Bertie is ill. This results in Henrietta becoming overloaded and the passengers end up having to ride on her balcony. When Toby narrowly avoids a crash at the crossing, Henrietta's balcony bends. A policeman witnesses this and warns them that it is illegal for passengers to ride on a coach's balcony. The Fat Controller eventually receives word of this, but has no idea on how to resolve the issue. Fortunately, as luck would have it, Thomas discovers an old abandoned coach turned garden shed in the brush at Elsbridge, named Victoria. Thomas suggests to the Fat Controller that Victoria be restored so that she can help with the increased number of passenger traffic. This story isn't anything amazing, but it does provide a strong opening for the book's plot moving forward. The second story, Avalanche, takes place while Victoria is being restored at the works. While there, she meets Edward. The old engine recognises her, as she too is originally from the Furness Railway. The two quickly become friends, and Victoria tells Edward about how she used to work with another coach called Helena, and they had their own engine named Albert. She tells Edward about the one and only time that Albert was boastful and had an accident. After setting off too quickly from a station, Albert shoots a big cloud of steam up at the mouth of a tunnel, which results in him and the coaches being buried almost completely by snow. After being rescued the next day, he never boasted about snow again. This is my favourite story in the book, and if I'm not mistaken, it's the most popular one in it. We learn a lot about the Furness Railway, with mentions of real places, such as the Windermere Lake and the branch line that ran to Haverthwaite. Overall, this is a nice little story that provides some world building and a nice backstory to the protagonist of the book. The next story, while enjoyable, actually has nothing to do with the book's plot and is completely unrelated. Eels on Wheels focuses on Daisy. One day in the summer, she discovers grass snakes for the first time. She later tells the others about them, and Percy is shaken up and cringes at the very thought of them. I feel you, Percy. I have ophidiophobia, so I know how you feel, buddy. Daisy scoffs and claims that he's being silly.
You're just a silly little engine.
Piss off, big head!
Later, while preparing to take a special delivery, a stack of boxes gets knocked over and tons of eels spill out and end up slithering everywhere, including underneath Daisy. She gets so scared that she blows a fuse, and she is in such a state that she can't be fixed even after the eels have been gathered up. The story ends with Toby and Percy making jokes about wriggly things, with Daisy expectedly being none too pleased about the whole ordeal. I don't mind this story, and it is nice to see Daisy again. However, aside from mentioning that Victoria's repairs are taking a long time at the start, this story just feels completely out of place. It's not a bad story by any means, but I feel like this spot could have been reserved for something that better fits the theme of the book. The final story shows Edward taking the newly restored Victoria to Thomas's Branchline, in which he takes her to meet Toby and Henrietta. While they are en route, Terence has an accident that results in his trailer spilling its load out onto the line. thus endangering Thomas. Luckily, Terence's owner manages to phone the station in time and Thomas is warned before reaching the obstruction. The tracks are soon cleared, and Thomas makes it to Farquhar where Victoria is introduced to Toby and Henrietta. The Fat Controller makes a speech, calling the consist Toby's vintage train. The book ends showing us that Victoria is as happy as can be, and that she now works with Toby and Henrietta, and occasionally with Thomas and Annie and Clarabelle. It's a sweet and fitting end to a nice book. Not much else to say about it really. Now if this book were to be adapted for the model series of the show, then that means it would have had to have come out in the hit era of the show. While the release dates of both are right on top of each other, this wouldn't be the first time that a Railway series book and a season of the TV series came out in near proximity to each other. That is what happened with season 2 after all. Now instead of adapting the first story, I am actually going to use a pre-existing story in its place. That story being Thomas, Percy and Old Slow Coach. The plot of an old coach being rediscovered and restored has actually been done a couple times in the series, not only with this episode, but also season 24's School of Duck, which actually took inspiration from this book. Instead of overdoing it, I think it would be better for us to use what has already been established in the TV show and build on top of it. So for a quick recap, in season 5, Thomas and Percy discover Old Slow Coach at the scrapyard and are determined to help her. They get their chance when the workman's hut at the beach burns down. Old Slow Coach is restored and turned into housing quarters for the men. Now this might seem a bit redundant, but since the episode ends with the coach already being restored, whereas the book still has 3 more stories to go, but trust me, there is a lot more that we can do with this. Now the rest of the stories are going to take place within season 11, making for quite a significant time gap, but one that serves a purpose. Now instead of using Edward as the engine that meets the old coach, I am instead going to use Duck. Why? Well, because Duck is a Great Western engine, and Old Slow Coach is a clerestory coach. Now where did these coaches work, and what railway were they built for? The Great Western Railway. I think you know where this is going. So Duck goes to the works for repairs. While there, he meets Old Slow Coach and instantly recognises her as Great Western. She explains that the workman's hut has since been rebuilt and she is receiving maintenance, but is unsure if she will be put into use again. Duck of course reassures her that she will, and in turn she tells him about her days on the GWR, except for the locations being swapped out for ones on the GWR, where she worked with her own engine, an engine named Oliver. I really like this idea, as not only would it provide some nice world building and a bit more of a backstory for a fan favourite character, but it would also explain Oliver's hatred for snow that we saw in season 7.
I'm a Great Western engine, he chuffed one day. I shouldn't have to shiver.
Now this probably would be too much to cram into a 4.5 minute classic episode, but with the 7-minute runtime of the hit era episodes, I think it could be done. As for Eels on Wheels, we could move it to the CGI series after she gets moved to work on the Hardwick Branchline alongside Ryan, with Ryan and Skiff now taking the place of Percy and Toby. Having the episode in CGI would also make it easier to animate and portray the Eels. It's not much, but hey, at least this keeps the story from clashing with the others. And for the final story, Old Slow Coach gets visited by the Fat Controller before leaving the works, who explains that she is going to be put to work on the Little Western, alongside Duck and Oliver, to which she is of course delighted. Duck takes her to the Branchline where she reunites with Oliver and meets Toad for the first time. On one of their first runs, Terence has the same accident as in the book, only this time the warning doesn't reach them in time. Toad tries to help Oliver avoid the crash, only for his brakes to fail. It seems that all hope is lost until the guard scrambles into Old Slow Coach and she uses her brakes to stop Oliver from having a collision. The day is saved and the story ends with Sir Topping Hat congratulating the old coach.
You were very brave indeed. I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Alright, well I hope you enjoy listening to me talk about my ideas for a Thomas and Victoria adaptation. I know that Thomas himself has barely anything to do with my synopsis, but that's the point. Thomas has barely any dialogue in the first story, and he's never seen speaking again throughout the whole book. His name is only in the title for markability purposes. Plus, I wanted to make use of an already established character that hasn't been seen in forever, one who had a great deal of potential. How would you guys like to have seen these stories adapted? Let me know down in the comments. Also, for anyone wondering, I am still going to cover James and the Diesel engines. I'm just finalising a few details, but I am aiming to make it the next Railway Series book that I talk about. I do plan to eventually cover every Railway Series book and story that hasn't been adapted. Anyway, until next time, I've been Cinders and Ashes UK, you've been awesome, and have a great day. Bye!